Hi everyone and welcome to my new studio space. This week I've been moving into a new studio and I thought that I would share some of the progress of that with you. So it's been a lot of hard work this week in very hot temperatures, but I'm getting there now, and I just wanted to share some of the progress of setting up a new studio and some of the ideas that I've had for this studio based on all the studios that I've had over the years. So in another video, I'll show you more of the actual studio, but in this video, I wanted to share today's task with you, which is one that I always look forward to because it's kind of satisfying to do, even though it's a lot of work. So I've got all of my soft pastels here. And today I need to give them all a bit of a clean and reorganize them a bit. For years I've carried my pastels around in these little click together trays, which many of you will be familiar with because I've shared these here on my YouTube channel. And they've been great, especially while I've been living more on the move. And these have made it very easy for me to transport my pastels around. But now that I'm in a bigger space, I've always wanted to have my pastels organized in one giant big spectrum. I've seen so many other artists with these beautiful pastel spectrums in their studios. So now that I have the space, I'm gonna reorganize my pastels like this. So instead of these smaller trays with my pastels all separated by foam bits, I have got some bigger wooden trays, and I'm gonna organize all of my pastels in these bigger trays, just all nice and loose and together. So let the fun begin. You can see that they are in good need of a bit of a clean. And the way I do it is still the same. I'm just going to use some individual sheets of toilet roll and just very quickly give each stick a quick wipe. Now I know that other artists clean their pastels in different ways. Some people like to put them in a zippy bag with dry rice or other things like this. I've never found that works so well for me. It just doesn't get them quite as clean as I would like. And so I just always revert back to the giving each stick a little clean. I don't do this very often, maybe about once a year I'll do this. I normally try to clean my pastels as I put them back in their trays after I finish a painting, so I sort of keep on top of the cleaning as I go. But the more they sit around in my dusty studio, of course, inevitably they're going to get a little bit grubby, so I'll do this maybe once a year, once every couple of years, just give them all a good spring clean. So here's how I'm getting on. First big tray starting to fill up. I have emptied 3 small trays and it's a lovely kind of jigsaw trying to piece together some kind of colour spectrum. You can see that I'm going from light down to dark, and there are many different ways that you can organize your pastels. This time I'm just going for straight up color spectrum. I do normally like to arrange my pastels in groups of colors, so all along I've had like light lilacs, dark purples. I've always separated them into color groups, but I think this is going to look really nice, so let's keep going.
So at this point I start to filter in my whites into this first tray, and I plan to have a row of whites down through my yellowy tints down into yellow, and I did think that I would have space for all of that in this first tray, but I really didn't know as I was emptying pastels how many of them were going to fit in one tray. So a few times throughout the process I do change my mind and have to move things around a little.
It's getting very warm in the studio and
this is going to take a while. I keep changing my mind on how exactly to organize the pastels, and it's not straightforward. I'll show you what I mean. So what I really want is to have the spectrum kind of running across my trays, so running from red, orange, yellow, green and on, and then from top to bottom, ideally my lighter tints at the top down to the darker values at the bottom. So that's the main idea that I'm following, and that sounds simple, but it is not simple because there are colours that want to go in more than one place. And the whole nature of a colour wheel is that it is circular, so it continues. So it's really up to you where you decide to start and finish the spectrum, because obviously it just keeps looping back round again. So I had to decide if I wanted to put my hot pinks at the start in front of the red, or if I want to save those and put them at the end after the lilacs. So there are lots of decisions to make when you go to do it, because there are lots of ways you could organise them. So far, so good. What I'm finding most difficult is judging how many of these little trays will actually fit in one of these big trays. So I think I emptied maybe 4 or 5 of these smaller trays into this one big tray, which is great. It really takes up less space, and I'm going to be able to see all my pastels at once. So I'll get back to it. I have a long way to go. So I'm on to the second tray, and you can see that I've moved my whites across and I've created a nice narrow space for my lighter white and light yellow tints down into my most vibrant yellows. And that I felt worked better because the yellows lead so easily into the light greens in some ways. So it's nice to have those two colours together in the one tray. And this was actually the easiest tray to do, I think, because I knew that I would fit all of my greens in here. Now that I've done the first tray, I have a bit of a feel for how many pastels are going to fit. So as you can see, it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, and I've laid out some other darker greens down towards the bottom, starting to map out where the colour gradient is going to go. But you can see now that I get some colours in, it starts to become easier to match where colours fit better. So I originally had those two in along with my vibrant yellows, but actually they fit much better with the light yellowy greens. So it was a bit of a learning process doing this. It's a little bit like doing an actual painting, because you're having to really analyse your colours in terms of tonal value and then temperature as well. So that's very much what I'm doing when I'm painting. So this has got to be quite a useful exercise for anyone to do. Even if you've only got a fraction of these pastels, you can absolutely do this with your collection. And sometimes just doing this points out where you might be lacking in some colours. So for me, having this palette sitting out like this, I can instantly spot when I'm missing a certain type of colour. So it can tell you if you've got some gaps in your spectrum. Of course, you don't need to have a full spectrum of colours to paint with. It very much depends on the type of subject matter that you like to paint. And over the years, I've accumulated a lot of these colours as I've gone through experimenting with different types of subject matter. So I've ended up with quite a good palette, pretty covered for most colours with this palette. So those delicious blue greens, and those are going to lead over into the blue violet zone. So again, another really satisfying box to put together. And it was really the first box that I struggled with the most. A bit like when you're starting a painting, actually. It's getting rid of that blank paper. And in this case, it was getting rid of some empty trays and just starting to see how the palette was going to move and how the colours would progress across it. But one thing still bothered me about tray number 1, and it's these ugly blacks at the bottom of the tray. So I had a change of mind here and decided to go back and put my pinks in before the reds. I had planned to put the pinks after the lilacs at the very end, but I can see now at this stage that I'm not going to fit them over here. And so it was a good solution to get rid of the blacks from the tray and add the pinks. So I'll just keep all of my blacks in a separate tray. I would much prefer to have all of these colours nicely together. So that was my thought process while I was doing this. You can see that I had to adjust what I was doing a few times, and it's really not as easy as it looks, this, but definitely a very useful and satisfying exercise.
This job always takes a bit longer than I think it's going to, but it's also quite satisfying to work on, and I'm really pleased with the outcome this time, because normally I've had to pack my pastels in a way that I can move them easily, so these aren't very transportable the way they are now, but they sure do look pretty when they sit out like this all together. And it's going to be so fun to use this big palette to choose the palettes for my paintings from. I think it's going to be a lot easier to find what I'm looking for. I hope that you enjoyed watching my full day of cleaning pastels and organising them. I am going to give you some more studio tours and talk you through how I'm setting up this new studio. If you'd like to see some footage of my old studio, I've got some videos here on YouTube showing how to film yourself while you're working, showing how to light your studio. My previous studio was really small and dark, so it was difficult to work in. My hopes are that this studio will be a lot easier for me to film in, and I look forward to sharing lots of new videos with you. And as always, if you've enjoyed this here, then please do hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Also the little bell notification button so that you hear when I release new videos if you'd like to see more of my new studio. Also do have a look about all of my playlists here on YouTube. I've got tons of pastel related tutorials and demos from over the years. And then if you'd like even more tuition, come and join me on Patreon, where you'll find my full library of real-time tutorials in soft pastel. But thanks very much for watching this here, and until next time, happy pasteling.